And so now we're going to transition into the panel where we're going to talk about connecting the dots. Actually, how do I do this in North Carolina? And so we're very fortunate to have expertise in this area. And the leader of this particular panel, the moderator, is Kelly Arrington. So I'll have her start making her way on down, as well as the rest of her panel, which consists of Matt Fair from Texas Capital, Jamie Kosofsky from Brady and Kosofsky, Julie Feltz from AmRock, and Steve Brown from Investors Title. And Raj is here. He is going to make it. All right. Raj was not feeling well, but he is able to join us, so that is terrific. And as they take the stage, come on up, everybody. I'll share with you just a little bit about Kelly Arrington. She is the Chief Mortgage Operations Officer at North State Bank. If Ken Sykes was here talking about her, he would say she is the true brains of the operation. And Kelly boasts experience that very few in her position have. She has literally transformed her organization from one that dealt in paper, and she made the conversion to an electronic process. And so we couldn't have a better person or panel to discuss these things. So with that, I give you Kelly Arrington.
Thank you, Ozzie. Well, this morning we've heard a lot about e-mortgages, e-closings, e-notes. Hopefully you are all ready to join the e-revolution. As you can tell, that is happening. You may be wondering how to start, where do you begin? Hopefully our panel today is going to be able to give you some very practical information, hopefully answer some of the questions that you have regarding that. Our goal is for you to leave here today with many of your questions answered and just some practical knowledge on how to get started. I'll quickly introduce our panel. You had the opportunity to hear from Matt Fair earlier. He is the risk manager for the mortgage finance group at Texas Capital Bank. Previously served as their risk manager for the bank's warehouse lending business. Thankfully, Raj made it today. I'm glad you are here. He's not feeling so well, but Raj Penagonda is the Product Development Senior Business Lead for the Single Family Strategic Delivery Division at Freddie Mac. He's responsible for managing and improving the eMortgage program. Jamie Kosofsky is one of the founding partners of Brady and Kosofsky. Jamie is an attorney and an entrepreneur who, through his extensive knowledge of real estate law, business law, and mortgage regulatory law, has created a unique mortgage-based law practice. Julie Feltz is a solution architect at AmRock and one of the company's resident subject matter experts in the world of e-closing. She's a certified signing agent and notary public, and her efforts have helped bring the company to the forefront of the digital closing movement with quite a few e-closings this year. I just got the actual number from her, and it is 56,632 e-closings from January 1st through August 21st. So talk about experience, that's a big number right there. And Steve Brown joined Investors Title Insurance Company in 2002. He assists in formulating and implementing legislative and regulatory efforts for the company, participates as a speaker and writer in paralegal and attorney education regarding legislative and regulatory issues, claims prevention and management, and participates in underwriting, identifying and resolving major claims, and formulating risk management policy. So Julie, I would like to start with you first. With over 56,000 e-closings this year alone, you certainly have great knowledge about the process and about how it can be achieved. Can you talk a little bit about how you went from A to Z, not having e-closings to having e-closings? What was your thought process on getting started? And can you speak a little bit about your efforts in selecting providers or partners?
Sure, of course. This was a true partnership between our lenders, our attorney partner, Brady and Kosofsky in North Carolina, software providers, To roll out e-closing, I believe we had 5 different companies do some sort of tech work for us to make that happen. But really what we did is took a deep dive into all of our processes to see where we could automate things to make it the default workflow so that it wasn't just a one-off. When we did the first couple, there were a lot of manual things we did behind the scenes to make that closing happen. The consumer had a great experience. The settlement agent, the closing itself was great. A lot of people were scrambling behind the scenes to get there though. And so we worked pretty hard to digitize our documents up front so that it wasn't a manual process to tag the documents and to get those documents to the e-closing software provider so that that closing could happen smoothly and the lender would get the docs back right away. So yeah, it was a real deep dive into processes.
So going from 0 to 56,000, how did you get everybody to be on board with that? And now it's just everyday practice, obviously, if you're doing that many.
Sure. Well, I think Mr. Sykes said it really well this morning, right? Everyone wants to get on that train, and so working with partners that also want to move in that same direction and make it happen. So I think having a lender, a settlement agent, title, and all across the board who wants to move in that same direction and choose a provider. I think we've used a few of the e-closing rooms that we just watched demos of, and just to make sure that everyone's on board with that process based on the lender, the consumer is comfortable, the notary, attorneys, everyone is moving in that same direction and trained and understands how to use the program is key.
Okay, great. Jamie, the perception is settlement agents are not ready. Is that accurate?
It depends. In a lot of places, the settlement agents are ready. In a lot of places, they're not. What does being ready mean? Being ready means you have to understand how these different settlement providers work. You have to understand the law of your state very, very well. And you have to be ready to open your mind up to looking at the transaction in a very different light. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of the settlement providers are ready when you look at the whole universe. I think that there are some that are, and I think there are some that are not. It's not a hard road to get ready. It just takes a little bit of an open mind and a whole lot of education, excuse me, and a lot of patience.
Can you talk a little bit about how you made the change to E and why E is better for your business?
How much time do you have? We made the change to E in 2007, long before we had even thought about the e-closing, because of storage concerns, because of compliance concerns, because I was in the REO industry and they wanted me to be able to cover the whole state, and I had to figure out how to make that work. And we used video really early, sending notaries out, having the folks come meet the notaries, and we were doing closings like that as early as 2007, 2008. Once this movement started up again, this movement was actually started back in the 90s. A couple of our speakers earlier did a closing. Tim and Nancy were involved in closings back in the 90s in northern Indiana, and it just died off with the default crisis we had. Well, when it came back, we'd been doing this type of transaction for REO already, and it was a natural progression for us to add the notary piece. I can remember banging my head against the wall thinking, oh, if I could only get electronic notary, we could make this process so much easier and so much more secure. And how valuable has it been? Our office burnt to the ground on July 5th at midnight. And we were open for business on July 5th. By 9 o'clock in the morning, we lost no documents, we lost no data, and we lost no checks. Why? Because everything we had was electronic. Everything we had done has been digitized, and it basically saved our business.
You may think a fire may not happen to you like Jamie's office, but if you live in North Carolina, you certainly are susceptible to hurricanes or any number of other things, and that's a good reason, another reason for going E. Matt, we'll go to you next. We got to hear you talk a little bit earlier about kind of becoming ready for the E revolution. What were the risk management concerns and kind of some of the impediments or challenges you guys faced? And can you talk a little bit about sort of the evolution of this effort just with Texas Capital Bank?
Well, it started in 2015. We first started hearing rumblings about it through the CFPB's white paper. Then we had a client approach us who wanted us to fund their digital mortgages. The sell to our oversight committee at the bank was basically, what we've all echoed up here today is the security around the e-note with the hash encryption, the single authoritative copy, the single repository for the recordation of the transaction history, right? Because our oversight committee was like, well, what if the e-note gets lost? Well, it's very difficult to lose an e-note. What if they're hacked? Well, there's backups. Really just sold them on the various security things there and the accuracy of the data. And that was from the warehouse side. Then we made the logical progression into buying e-notes through our correspondent aggregation unit. So the argument there was you get a more accurate, arguably a better investment grade product to deliver to secondary market. And what better way to support the industry and our business is to make help our clients make that experience better for the borrower, but while also reducing risk. It was once I laid out that foundation of arguments on top of ensuring that our collateral position was secure through the way that UETA and UCC tie in together, it just made sense for the bank. And we've been funding e-notes through warehouse since December of 2016 and buying them as an aggregator since last fall.
Terrific, thank you. Raj, you've seen a broad spectrum of what lenders have done, and can you talk a little bit about how they've done it differently, what best practice techniques you can share?
Yeah. So based on what we have seen, Kerry, is that, based on what we have seen, most lenders approach the electronic documents rollout in a phased manner, right? Because they believe that it gives them the ability to learn from their previous implementation and fine-tune their process before they add more documents to the scope. A couple of examples of phased approaches are some people start with just initial disclosures, then add electronic note. Some folks start right away with the initial disclosures as well as closing documents, but they exclude the notarized documents. And fortunately, in North Carolina, you don't have to do that. You can include all your loan documents in your e-closing scope because there is a great deal of support from a e-notary standpoint as well as e-recording standpoint, right? But regardless of the approach these lenders have taken, a couple of best practices I have seen. One, Julie already touched upon, is these lenders have reached out to their business partners early on in their process, meaning they reached out to their warehouse lenders, investors, settlement companies, sub-servicers. So they reached out to all of those partners early on in the process to make sure they are ready before the lender rolls out their eMortgage project, right? The second thing I have seen is these lenders have designed systemic controls to determine which documents can be electronically signed. As an example, some of the system controls could be based on property state, property counting, right? If the property state doesn't support e-notary, then what the system automatically does is it does not tag the notarized documents for the electronic signatures, right? The other thing that I have noticed in a lot of successful implementations is if you think about the objective of eMortgage process or e-closing process, in addition to risk reduction, right, the number one driving factor is the borrower experience, right? So you definitely want to make sure the device you use to conduct closing transactions has a screen size that is comfortable to the borrower, because you want to make sure borrower is able to read the documents, understand what it says before they sign it, right? So I mean, the one last thing I would like to mention is a lot of these lenders have designed the process in such a way, at any point of time, if the borrower is not comfortable going the e-sign route, they can switch out to paper process.
Okay, thank you, Raj. Steve, there are many concerns in the industry regarding cost, technology, security. What are the myths regarding these concerns, and why is E so much better?
As I mentioned when I asked the question a few minutes ago, I started my career in the title industry running claims department in Investors Title. I was fortunate to be at the first full end-to-end e-closing in North Carolina. North State Bank was involved and had it at one of their sites. It was set up so that the attorney was in one location, the borrower was in another location, the recording was going to take place in another county. And I went just to watch and see, because I'd been on this committee and I knew it was coming and I wanted to learn about it. And the first thing that started happening when the process started, I'm not going to describe the process for you, but the first thing that happened when the process started is I thought, whoa, there's a whole set of claims that goes away. And then next step, I went, oh my gosh, there's another whole set of claims that just went away. And I practiced law and was on management committees of law firms for 17 years before I came with Investors. And then I started to say, whoa, there's all kind of money the law firm's going to save here. Oh, there's a whole way to speed up processes. This is going to require less people. I'm going to tell you, if you went electronic, the money you will save in toner, go look at your toner bill, okay? In the title industry, our biggest problem since I've been in the title industry is getting attorneys to understand how important it is to get their post-closing work done. Guys, this is easy. It's done. When you close a transaction, 90% of your post-closing work is done. It is the biggest holdback that I've seen as we've gone around the state the last couple of years talking to attorneys about e-closings is fear. And there are different fears. But the world's changing. My wife has a business. She custom designs and makes window treatments and fabric treatments for the home. So we had a conversation this week. Her customers have shifted. For a while, when we had kids, she started her business doing it for her friends and people she met and our kids' friends and parents and stuff like that. Now she's doing it, we're 60 years old, now she's doing it for my kids' friends who are having babies and need new nurseries. And she had one of those clients this week, and she said, the person who's doing your upholstery work prefers to be paid by check. And the girl said, I don't think we got a check. Let me go see if we got a check. And she comes back and she said, my husband's got some checks with the banking record, but I think they're probably stale. And my wife said, which bank are they drawn on? She said, Wachovia. Okay. The world is changing, and it's changing in this direction. And fear is causing people to stand back. One of the big fears, we talked earlier about we've got 86 counties now that have electronic recording. That means we got a few that don't. And you go to those areas, and in the more remote areas of the state, and you say, what? And some are and some aren't. And you go and you say to the attorneys there, why do you all not pushing for electronic closing in your county? Oh, we don't want Jamie Kosofsky closing loans in our county. And I say, guess what, guys? He figured that out 10 years ago. You're fighting a phantom that's already here. And you're not protecting your clients, you're not protecting your people the way you can. Security-wise, no comparison. No comparison. Years ago, we had a claim, a person who had signed a document in San Antonio, Texas, was claiming, I never was in that attorney's office, I never appeared before that notary, I never signed that document. This was before North Carolina required our notaries to verify identity. And so we went down there to take the deposition of this notary. She not only had verified the identity, she had a copy of the driver's license. Texas required her to keep a logbook. She had the person sign the logbook as well. She went the extra step beyond what was required by law. She had a Polaroid camera, and she had a picture of this guy sitting there signing the document in his office. Case was over. There's a trail here. There's security built into the system. When we started talking about electronic protection and the CFPB standards and the need to protect the information and do all that, all the attorneys worried about how much that was going to cost. It's built into the system that these people will provide you. It is secure. It is fast. The other thing, remember when we talked about CFPB and we were out educating the attorneys and we said, you know, they got to have the closing package 3 days before, so you're going to have time to actually counsel your clients before they get it. Did that happen? No, it didn't. So now I say to people, my banker friends, no, it didn't. Now I say to my friends who are attorney closing, this is going to change that. You do not want to be, neither the lender, your clients, or you want to be making changes at the table. And if you have to make changes at the table, it's not simply a matter of going to the typewriter and typing it. You've got to go to the document provider, they've got to get with the lender, and they've got to change it, and your closing may not occur today. So it is to the lender's advantage, somebody said, to know when they got your client to get that package. And when I went to that first e-closing, the attorney had already gone over the package with the people by phone. He was looking at his computer, they were looking at their computer, long before the closing. So once the closing started, once the e-notary started the process of getting the electronic signatures and going, from beginning to end, the closing took about 23 minutes. And the attorney was there, electronically, on a video screen, to answer any questions. It ran just like a closing, but what you didn't have was you didn't have 15 documents going back and forth across the table being signed by multiple parties. What you didn't have was at the end of the closing, somebody having to take all those to the copy machine, take them apart, make copies, put them back together, and that's where see Exhibit A and there's no Exhibit A attached. That's where that happens, or see Exhibit A, and it's the Exhibit A from the other closing that was going on at the same time in the office. That's where that happens. None of that happens now. Because the e-document drives the signature process, there are no missed signatures. You can't keep going if you're not hitting all the signatures. There's no somebody signing their name on one document one way and signing it on another document another way, which then raises the question, did the person who signed the notice, is it the same person who signed the deed of trust? I mean, we get all these things as claims. They just go away. They just go away. So I'm saying that to me, the biggest thing holding back this in attorneys is that attorneys don't recognize this is just a tool. It's a much more advanced tool than you've ever had before. It is a more cost-efficient tool than you've ever had before. It is a more secure tool than you've ever had before. And you're not having to pay for the infrastructure to put it in place. So why aren't you using the tool? Or why are you scared to use the tool? So those of you who are here, the best thing that happened today was when somebody said, I want to do it again. How many of you all are attorneys? That's the best thing that ever happened today. Because you're ahead of your competitors. Because you're here. And you can learn how to use this tool faster than they can. So when Mr. Sykes' company calls you and says, can you do an e-closing? You say, yes, I can. Yes, I can. And I want to say something else that everybody in this room who is a North Carolina attorney needs to know. Is the Secretary of State, Madam Secretary over there, and Ozzie, where's Ozzie? Ozzie Stallworth. You heard I do legislative and regulatory affairs. I wish I could clone Ozzie and put him in about 25 other positions in state government that I have to deal with. The work they have done on your behalf to make this happen is nothing short of incredible. And when I was at that first closing, there was some politicking that went along with it. The press was there, and Secretary Marshall gave a comment, and no less than 4 or 5 times during her comments, and you can play it back, did she stress that the state law of North Carolina requires that the attorney be in control of the closing and manage the closing and do it. This is not meant to supplant that. It is meant to enhance that. And you need to thank her for doing that, because she supports you, she understands your importance in the process, and you need to thank her for doing that. And so what I'm telling you is, if your fear is holding you back, and I hope the ones who came today, it's not, from embracing this, you're missing an opportunity because you got a head start.
Thank you, Steve. All great points. I am excited to see how many attorneys and other people are here today, and it's great that this conference did sell out. It is very exciting for us, for those of us that have been talking about this for a couple of years, to see this attendance at this conference. So thank you very much for coming today. Jamie, since we were talking about security and the customer experience, I was hoping you could speak to what kind of concerns have your customers had? How have you handled that? Have you had any experiences where they have not wanted to go E and have asked to go paper because they didn't feel like it was secure?
I have to ask Esther.
Actually, we had,
This is Esther Fernandez. Esther's our COO, and she is very involved in the e-closing process at our firm.
so actually we had, just brought it to this. Our first couple were purchases, those were great. The first one, from beginning to end, was paperless, to include the seller side. Both sides experienced just pure enthusiasm. Our first refi, was a, be conservative with the age quote, 75-year-old lady, who walked in, she goes, "Let me tell you, honey, I don't even make online." So I was like, let's see how this goes. She absolutely adored it. She walked out, she had ease of reading it, she said to us, I didn't have to sign everything 1,000 times, that was so nice. I could focus on the documents. So overall, our experience has been great. People have broad range of ages that we've dealt with, and every single one of them has walked away with a great experience. They receive their packages earlier, they have the ability to review them. We receive the packages earlier, so we're able to review them. We have run into experiences where there is an issue with the document. You said 3 hours with people trying. At most, it's taken 30 minutes to get the whole new package. And that one was probably our most intense issue. Most of them, if there's a revision that needs to be made, 5 minutes later, you're good to go. And so overall, you're going to have learning curves and experiences, but overall, it's welcome. And from a settlement closing position, it has been, this has been extremely positive.
Thank you, Esther.
I do want to add one thing.
Okay.
So of the attorneys that are in the room, fellow attorneys in the room, how many of you guys have internet? How many of you guys have a laptop? Okay. Those of you that just raised your hand, you've got what it takes to do an e-closing. You need a laptop, you need internet, you need an e-notary, and you need a bank that's willing to close it. There's nothing more to it. There's no magic to it. There's no secret, double secret lists. So my biggest piece of advice to the attorneys in the audience is, you already have the equipment, you've got the license, you've got the people, you've got the practice and the relationships. Take this, jump up and down with it, use it as a marketing piece, and they will come.
Very good point, thank you. Julie, can you talk a little bit about the customer experience for you guys and what that's been like? Have you had any customers who have said, I want to back out of this, I don't feel like it's secure? Have you run into that? I mean, you have quite a number under your belt, so I think you have good experience with that.
Surprisingly, we have a survey that we send out to get some feedback from consumers that e-close with us, and in the comments area, quite a few have actually said, the closing was great, I just wish I had a hard copy of the documents, which kind of makes us chuckle a little bit. They do have that available to them to be printed. But so far it's been great, and I think Esther mentioned age ranges. We don't see any variances there because the consumer doesn't really need, they don't need to understand the technology. They don't need to know how to work the computer very well. They just need to be able to read the documents and sign them, and whether it's with their finger or a mouse instead of a pen, they're following that same process.
Thank you. Steve, are the title companies ready? Are there impacts and risks to title that we need to be concerned about?
I'm glad you asked that. There's one area of concern that everybody needs to understand. No offense to anybody who's here from the administrative office of the courts, but I was speaking with a former head of the administrative office of the courts who happens to now go to my church. And I said to him, we were sitting in a meeting, we were bored, and I said to him, let me ask you a quick question. He said, what? I said, is the AOC system that we check judgments and Liz Pendens on, is that the largest remaining DOS system in the world? And he said, Steve, it's worse, it's COBOL. Okay? The AOC system, there are gaps between somebody recording something at the clerk's office and the time it shows up on that system. It varies from county to county what those gaps are. So even if you have e-recording, you need to know, if you're recording in a remote county electronically, what that gap is, and you need to have a paralegal who can go down and check that index, or you're taking responsibility for the gap. And that's a problem we have. It's a structural problem in North Carolina because that AOC database is the largest, I've been told, I'm not an expert in these things, is the largest database the state has, and the legislature doesn't want to spend the money it will take to convert that database to make it a modern system. Thus you have the archaic search feature. Thus you have these kinds of issues and delays. And until that's fixed, you need to know that if you're using remote recording, you've got to figure out how to deal with that gap in places. That's the kind of thing that people say, well, we don't want that changed because those out-of-state, those out-of-county attorneys, they'll come into our county and close loans. Janie already knows how to close that gap. And other attorneys, the foreclosure firms who've been doing across the state in all 100 counties, they know how to close that gap. And it can be done. It's not a problem. But what I'm saying is that's a big fix we need. That's the one place where we're really behind other states. In some states, we're way ahead of a whole lot more. At least ours is computerized. We don't have 6-month gaps. We have hour gaps or a day gap or maybe 2 days gap. So, but again, the biggest holdback in all this, and our concerns in terms of things, I've already told you, we think that a whole lot of claims are going to go away. A whole lot of them. Our ability to manage claims, having that trail is, since we don't record assignments and mortgages in North Carolina, having that trail, who's holding that note, will help our claims administration greatly. But we're not out here encouraging this because of you. We're out here encouraging it because we're the people who sign on to protect your customers, and we think this provides the best protection for your customers. We think you being part of the process is critical to that. This is not to take the attorney out of the process. We don't want that at all. It is to help keep the attorney involved in the process. Because there are people out there who will say, well, my friend in Georgia's behind us. My friend in wherever, they get theirs closed, and their closure took half as long, and they didn't have an attorney involved, so therefore having an attorney involved is a bad thing. No, it's just they had the tool, and they used it. And there's no reason an attorney closing should be any more cumbersome. It's actually better, it's more protection for the consumer. But that's why we're out pushing this, is because you need to stay in the game, and you need to stay up and compete with the models that happen in other places, so we can keep the system we've got in North Carolina, which we think the best one we've got. So it's all about you. You attorneys who are in the room, it's all about you for us. You're still our best quality control, but this tool helps you. You know, I tell people when I'm talking about claims, and I'm going to apologize in advance, we expect you attorneys, we expect mistakes. That's why we exist. Because when you take a group of people and you assign them a series of complex interrelated tasks and you have them perform them under time and financial pressure, what's going to happen? Mistakes are going to be made. This takes a lot of that pressure off. And it fixes a lot of those mistakes for you. You can't make them anymore. Why would you not want to do that?
Hi.
Thank you, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Hey.
Kelly. Hi. I'm Ashley Black. I'm an attorney here in Raleigh. I'm also a former president of Relink, the Real Estate Lawyers Association of North Carolina. And I've worked with Steve for, gosh, a decade and a half now. And I just want to respectfully disagree with him. I feel like he's saying that we're fearful, and I don't think we're fearful anymore. I just want Ken and all the lenders here to know that you have 50 attorneys in this room who are ready, and we're ready to jump in, and we're here to learn. And then once we learn, all these people in here, we're going to go out there and let all of our brethren know that this is something that's possible and that we can do e-closings here in North Carolina. And I just don't want y'all to think that we're scared or fearful. We're here to help, and we're here to make sure that we're doing this process in a way that's going to benefit all of our consumers and our clients, and we shouldn't lose focus that they're the ones we're here to protect and to make sure that they understand what's going on. So
Thank you.
I think we're past the fearful part, and again, we're excited, and we're glad to be here with you learning today.
Thank you so much for that. Certainly, as lenders, we are very excited to hear you say that, and we are very excited to see how many of you came today. We really are thrilled that, like I said earlier, that this was a sellout, and we are hoping that this will take us far. I have one last question for Raj, and then we'll take some more Q&A. We'll have a couple more minutes. I don't want to leave out the lenders in the room. I know there are a lot of attorneys here, but I don't want to leave out the lenders either. Raj, could you speak to just a practical process for lenders if they want to start and they want to deliver? How do they do that with Freddie? How does that work?
I would simply say reach out to Freddie. but jokes apart, right? Seriously, as you start thinking about the electronic mortgage process, e-closing process, reach out to us because we have tons of resources, because we talk to a lot of lenders, warehouse providers, sub-services pretty much on a daily basis. And we have looked at several technology solutions. So we can really provide you guidance on how to go about the eMortgage implementation. And as we talked about previously, right, the first thing you want to definitely make sure is don't worry about the technology part. Technology part is very easy. It's all there. There are a lot of solution providers that give you the e-closing system, e-note systems, e-war systems, everything is there. What's really required is take a look at the process and make sure you understand the impacts to your process as you start converting some of the documents or all documents to electronic. Understand the process impacts. Reach out to your business partners. Reach out to Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae. I would say that. Reach out to Fannie Mae as well, right? We will guide you through the process, and there are tons of resources that we can provide you in terms of how you can service a e-note as an example, because servicing of e-note has certain different aspects to it when compared to the paper note. So we can provide you all that guidance. But I think I would say in summary, identify process impacts, identify what kind of experience you want to provide to your borrowers, because you want to make sure they like the process, right? And then I already mentioned systemic controls. You want to automate your process in such a way that system determines what documents can go the e-route based on the loan attributes, based on the transaction type, things like that. And then make sure that you are able to retain a good audit trail of all the events that happen in the e-closing process, because that's very, very critical when it comes to enforceability of the electronic note.
Thank you, Raj. I think we have a few minutes left for questions and answers. Yes, ma'am.
Well, it's not a question, but it's a plea. We've been working at the Secretary of State's office to close this gap issue since 2001. And I'm just a nasty mosquito around the AOC when I bring this up. It is going to take a highly concerted effort between the real estate industry, the lending industry, the legal profession, and others involved in this to make it known to the General Assembly. This is important. We dedicated funding for this. At some point, there has been some interest in creating a dedicated fund of money to go ahead and close this. But it should be an appropriation. It would probably be a one-time appropriation to do the conversion, but then a maintenance appropriation ongoing. So we haven't forgotten this issue, but it's going to take a concerted effort of a lot of folks to close that gap.
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to play devil's advocate for a minute on the lender side. I talked to Shane at the first session today. Shane mentioned that one of the better strategies in the scene of adaptation was going to a main originator and getting their buy-in on this process. And I think, one of the things that they be out there selling that they're fighting on a day-to-day basis is, the comparisons of the LDC space. Well, I think that originator would be more accepting of this electronic process if you actually sell over closing costs. And when we talk about less post-closing, faster, efficient, just less cost in general, I don't think any of that's been passed on to the consumer at this point. So I mean, just from a common standpoint, maybe I'd like to say that, title insurance still costs the same, and what I'm hearing is that there's less risk. If it wasn't used take out, now take out, like most of these are the same.
Jamie, would you like to address that?
I would certainly sell it a lot easier, upstream and downstream, that hey, you need to adapt the process. If you cost lower and sell more loans, that's what you can find.
With all due respect, when you look at your closing statement for your individual customer, what are the most expensive items on there? Huh? Realtors? It's not the attorneys. The attorneys are underpaid for what they do. And I'm not criticizing the realtors. I'm just saying what you just said is a mistake. Title insurance rates in North Carolina are the lowest of any in the country. And it's because of our attorneys and the job they do. Okay? So it's time they get paid what they're worth, not that this be the saving pass on. It's going to make what they do even more valuable. And I'm going to stand up for them on that.
Your question was a great question, and I think somebody
the
mentioned earlier that when we have probably more closings under our belt, it will be easier then to determine what the real cost savings is. It's difficult at this point for us, I know, because of the number that we have or the number we haven't had. I think when it becomes on a bigger scale, it will be easier to determine that. I can't speak for the attorney perspective or title or anybody else, but I just know for the lender, I think that's where we are with that cost savings, is we don't really have an accurate picture yet of what that exact cost savings is, just because there hasn't been enough of these.
I would agree. From an attorney standpoint, It still takes the same amount of time to close a loan. My malpractice coverage still costs the same amount. And it's not, it's not replacing people. It is making them more productive. And I think as we see numbers increase, yeah, it might be time to look at it, but right now, it's not, you know, it's not in the cards.
Thank you. Well, I got the 1 minute sign from Ozzy, so I know our time is almost up. Thank you very much. And if you will, please give a hand to our panel.